Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. What a great day to be together as the Lord's church. As we get going this morning, I've asked Joe Gambrell if he would lead us in prayer.
Will you bow with me? Dear Lord, we just come to you today with a thankful heart, dear God, that we can all be here to learn more about you and grow closer to you, dear God. I just ask that you use Trent today, dear Lord. Give him the words to say and the lesson that we all need to hear, dear Lord. Let it prick our heart and change our life in whichever area we need it, dear God. And that's in your most holy, precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. We're continuing in chapter 3 of 2 Timothy this morning. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to 2 Timothy chapter 3. Last week, we began in verse 1 by saying, "But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty." Do you remember what we said the last days mean? What's it talking about here?
The end of the church.
All right, so the end of the church. So many people believe that it's talking about, hey, the end of time. But in the commentaries that I was looking at, it was talking more about what will destroy the Lord's church. If you want to know what could happen to the Lord's church in your area, you need to pay attention to the following things. And we had a list of things in verses 2 through 5. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And what we talked about is so many times we see these lists and we think, yep, that's right. This is things we need to avoid, whatever. And we just kind of go on. And so I want us to dig into that list a little bit. And last week we talked about lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, and arrogant. So today what I want us to pick up with is abusive. And in the commentaries I looked at, they were saying that this is dealing more with a verbal abuse than it is a physical abuse. But understand the word abuse. What do you think it's talking about here? What is? All right, so, but it's so harsh that you're trying to destroy that person, whether it's their self-confidence, their self-esteem, their image in the community. You are so abusive in the way that you're trying to tear them down verbally. The next few, I couldn't help but to write down a few ideas that the commentary said because it was just really impactful as I studied it. Next one is disobedient to their parents. The commentary said, if children do not learn the importance of obedience or respect for authority in their homes, why would we ever think that they would be submissive at school or work? What do you think about that? It's true. So, what do you think society is leaning towards today when it comes to raising kids?
Gentle parenting.
Gentle parenting. I like that. I'm going to tell you, and I think we need to take a look at ourselves some, because I'm going to tell you, if I look back at some of the mistakes I made, one of the things that I felt like I made a mistake in so many times is because something would happen with one of my kids, whether they made a mistake and we punished them or something hard was happening in life, I would swoop in afterwards and it's like, oh, but it's okay. It's okay. I shouldn't say that. There were times that I didn't let them struggle. So what do you think the future life's going to be for them? It's going to be hard, isn't it? Because life is tough, and it is for all of us. And I had to come to a realization of I've got to let them suffer a little bit. I've got to let them see consequences to life. And I'm going to understand, if we cannot help them to see that life is hard, there are consequences when you make mistakes. If you cannot ever respect me as an authority figure in the home, you're going to have a hard life. And we wonder why society is in the condition it's in. And we allow it. But notice the whole point of this. The last days. Because if the church doesn't do this within their own homes, and our kids grow up without having respect for authority, what's going to happen within the Lord's church? Exactly. They'll never respect God. The way we as Christians raise our kids is vital to the continuance of the Lord's church, to be what the Lord's church intended it to be. Have you noticed that in America, churches in general have become more of a country club than a place to worship and honor and serve God? Why? Well, when you have people in it that really have no respect for authority, let's just get together and have a good time and say, we love God. Because if you walk in some of those places, I'm not going to tell you that, I'm not beating up anybody who has a certain sign out in front. That's not the point. I'm just talking about some of these in general. These people have no respect for authority, and when they have no respect for God's law, they just want to be together and say they love God. But when they're unwilling to live the life God's called us to live, it's nothing more than a country club. And that is the importance of us raising godly kids in the home. Questions or comments? One more thing that I want to say about that, because as a parent or even a grandparent, as you're helping your kids raise their kids, please continue to remember that things need to be consistent in the home. You can't say one minute, well, if you do that again, I'm going to spank you, and you never follow through with it. Or this one time there's a consequence for it, but the next time, well, we just don't have time to deal with that today. Well, you're talking about keeping your kid in chaos of what I'm supposed to do or not do. There is a consequence. There's not a consequence. Keep things constant, continuous, and let them understand what life is supposed to be like so they understand how to meet the expectations. Because God expects all of us to meet expectations. Make sure that you follow through. Next thing is ungrateful. It says, it is a sign of supreme decay of civilization when youth loses all respect for age and fails to recognize the unpayable debt and the basic duty it owes to those who gave it life. How many kids do we see nowadays that are just ungrateful? Why? Because we've never taught them in the home to be grateful. And I'm going to tell you, how many of y'all, let's just go back a little ways. How many of y'all remember how special Christmas Day was because you were just wanting one item, one thing, and you thought, man, if I just got, no matter what, there was that one thing, and you just felt like, man, I got the one thing and I'll play with it all year long. But now what do we do to kids on Christmas Day? We give them all kind of toys and presents. Then they go to grandparents' house and get all kind of toys and presents. They go to the other grandparents' house and get all kind of toys. They see the cousins, they've got all kind of toys. They're not grateful for anything. Why? Because they got everything. I think sometimes we miss a point to teach them to be grateful for the things that they have. Yes, sir.
In this day and time, when a kid gets 16 years old, they're bought a car, insurance, gas, upkeep. They never work for it. And as they get older, they expect for something for nothing.
And that's part of this, and I'm glad you said it that way. They never learn to work for anything. Understand, to be part of the family as your kid grows up, they need to understand they have a responsibility in the home. They need to be a part of the cleaning, the upkeep, the things going on. Why? Because they need to be grateful for the things that we as parents have given to them, provided for them. But we have almost created a society that just says, no, you exist, so you're all good. No, you need to be a part of something. And when we're not a part of something, then we can walk in and out of it all we want to. And then it translates into the Lord's church. If we raise kids that feel like they deserve because they exist, What are they going to do within the Lord's church? As soon as things aren't the way I like it, don't expect much out of me. I want y'all to take care of me, but don't expect much out of me. If we have a lot of people like that within the Lord's church, what's going to happen to the Lord's church? It's going to die. Because when nobody's taking care of anybody else, because everybody wants them to take care of me, they're going to walk away. I'm not happy here any longer. And I'm going to tell you, that's why we need to make sure that we're allowing everybody, encouraging everybody to invest in the Lord's church. Why? Because when we invest in it, we're grateful for what God has blessed us with. We get to see God at work, and we're a part of something greater than ourselves. And that also means that investing means I'm looking at everybody else, checking on everybody else. Because I'm not here for me. I'm here for God, and I'm here for you. Now, do I get a lot from that? Of course, I hope so. Because all of a sudden, my life has meaning. It has purpose. But if we're not grateful for our homes, our families, if we're not grateful for our church family, we're not grateful for this life God's given us, it will affect the Lord's church. And he says when people become ungrateful, it changes things. Unholy. Little to no respect for God, Christ, and the Bible. And when I say that, the life God calls us to live as His children, not just this book that we hold. The idea behind it is that we don't teach our children respect for authority, for obedience and authority. They will never learn to be holy. What do you think God expects out of us when He says, be holy, for I am holy? Be more like Him. What else? Obedience. Which goes hand in hand. To be more like Him, the only way we can be more like Him is to obey His commands, His teachings, His instructions. Why? Because all of those commands and teachings and instructions cause us to be more like Him. Whose image are we made in? God's image. He made us in His image for a purpose so we could be His child. We could be like Him. What were you about to say?
You know, to me, holy also means separate, set apart, something special. And sometimes we're afraid to be that. We don't want to be different.
Yeah. And so I'm glad you said that, because I think so many times we as Christians are like, okay, God, I understand what you're saying. You want me to be nice and good and better than most, but how close can I stay over here to this side so I don't look different? And what happens? When we're over on this side, are we holy or unholy? Unholy. Let's be honest. Don't play the game. You cannot play the game. God doesn't say, please love me with part of your heart. Please love me with just half of it. How much of our heart is He expecting? All of it. That means we have to be back over here on this side saying, God, I can't deal. I'm not going to deal any longer with what they think or how they treat me. God, what I'm looking for is for you to be happy with my life and what I'm trying to do. And my heart is I'm trying to give my all to you. I'm not going to try to play this game of how close can I get any longer. That's what I did when I was young. Now that I'm adult and maturing as a Christian, God, I want to give my life to you. Yes, sir.
A lot of people think, or some people, what's the least I can do and still get to heaven?
You know, and how many of us have lived our... Now, understand, I don't think anybody is intentionally saying, what's the least I can do and still get to heaven. But how many of us live our life that way and have tried to justify it? And at some point in time, we have to ask ourselves, is that what I'm doing? And it's almost this idea of, boy, the world that I live in, that I'm called to, my family, my job, the things that I want to do, social media, anything you want to throw in this. The world that I live in expects a lot out of me. It demands a lot out of me. So God, how can I still stay right here because it's expecting so much and you still be happy? It's like I can't be happy. You've given your heart over here when I ask you to be over here. And understand, we cannot get out of this world. So how do we live in this world but stay over here. Because when he calls us to be holy, he said, you're still going to be in the middle of these things. But what's your purpose now? Is your purpose to have a better job, to get more money, to please your boss, to make your kids happy? No. I'm just living in this world to get everybody to heaven because I'm about his will. That keeps us holy. Yes, sir.
I don't want to get off too much, but we can do all those things.
Yes.
But what do we got to put others first?
Yeah.
I can strive to be successful. I can strive to do this, do that. But if I put other people first, when we get right down to it, is that not what God's expected, how we're expected to live our life? Serve others? And that, to me, all this stuff we're talking about, that's what we don't teach.
Yes.
The rules don't apply. The rules don't apply to kids now. And you know what? The worst part of it ain't kids. It's the way mom and daddy justify things where it don't apply.
Yeah.
Hey, you're a good kid. Don't worry about it. Yeah, we're going to go, we don't have to abide by that. That's really for the people that don't act this way.
Yeah.
No. We cannot humble ourselves enough just to be, I don't want to say be worldly, but not to stand, that we have to stand out above everybody else.
Yeah.
I agree with what Mark says. We're to be special in God's eyes. We're supposed to do all this. But as far as out here in day-to-day life, we should not expect ourselves to be treated, or our kids, we should not be raising our kids to be expected to be treated different than the general population.
Yeah.
That's just me. I mean,
I love the point you made of how many times we live this life where we say, in this situation, the rules don't apply. But because we are teaching that lesson, mostly through our actions. We're like, yeah, but when we get to the ball field, that's what I know. I act different, and hey, it's all about you. And I know at our job, hey, I can't help it. I'm hanging out with those guys, and they're causing me to. And you know what? I'm so consumed with me. And Brian, you're exactly right. When are we going to be in those situations? And you're right. It doesn't mean God expects us to have pride in our job. He expects us to do well because I'm working for Him, doing it well. When are we going to change our hearts to sit there and say, God, I live first in these situations for you, and then I'm following your second greatest command, making sure I'm humbling myself and taking care of all these people around me because you put me here for a reason. And if we as adults can't do it, why would we ever expect our kids to do it? The rules apply everywhere we go. We're always a child of God in everything we do. And that's the only way we can be holy.
You know, when I was growing up, if you were part of a baseball team or whatever, you had to win first place to get the first place trophy. And we have evolved to the point that everyone gets a trophy no matter what. And that attitude is permeated throughout our society. It's just as long as we participate, we'll get the trophy, which a lot of people think that trophy is heaven. It's not. Unless we strive and set our goal and work toward it, we're not going to achieve the goal that we think. And it's so easy to just include everybody, so nobody's offended. We just all go along and get along. And it's going to be a sad day when they realize, those of us that do or don't make it, it's going to be a sad story.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it is really finding this line that God has drawn for us to say, yes, I have to work and I have to give myself to that work, or teach our kids the same thing, whether it's at the ball field or everything. Yes, you work for something. Our whole life should be working for something. But making sure those two things are in place. Because we have to love God, we have to love others as we do every bit of it. And I think we can do it. I think we see many examples. How in the world do you think King David made it as the greatest king alive, a man after God's own heart, without giving to the kingdom? Without giving when it came to time for war. He didn't sit back in a time for war going, sorry guys, He gave and He worked. We can still be people who work. We can still be families that go to the ball field. We can still be people that go and do. But we've got to keep those two things in place. I am a child of God. I live my life for God, and I'm doing everything the way He's asked me to do that. Paying attention to other people is a lot of the key of how I treat you, because my goal is, in this situation God put me in, is to help you get to heaven. If we follow those two things as we go through this life, God will be glorified, and we can be holy in doing just that. Any other questions? Mark, you have one.
I'm just going to say, when we do those things, when we're humble and when we put others first, we automatically are set apart. There's not something we have to say and tell people we're this or that. Our actions show that. And all of a sudden people, if we do it, it's a challenge, but if we do it right, people are attracted to that. And we show God through us without saying, hey, I'm here. But we're humble at that. We realize we make mistakes, but it's the way we handle those situations. You're right, in every situation. That's some situations are more difficult for me than others. Easier for me to be good here, but maybe not here.
Yeah.
And so we've got to kind of recognize those situations, maybe avoid some things that we can't handle as well, because we want to show that God is holy in us. Yeah. And we do that by just the simple things, really, that putting others first and putting God first. Then we're sanctified. That's how we're sanctified. That's how we spread the word.
And I think it's a combination of those things, because you're right. We should never have to go and tell people, hey, by the way, I am a Christian. Here I am. Look at me, how humble I am. The words are meaningless if there's no support behind it. But also the opposite's true. If I'm sitting there and I'm living this life that I've been called, and I'm living it for the glory of God, I should be constantly talking about God. There shouldn't be a separation where I just hope they see it in me. I hope there's something different. It's got to be both. We've got to be people who sit there, and when people look at us, they go, you constantly talk about God. You acknowledge that God did that. Hey, but I see it in your life. I see that's what's driving you. I see that's why you do what you do. Both of those things have to be in place, so we're living this life that's different, that's set apart, but we're also giving glory and recognition to God. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Sure. Jesus, I think, said the key to it. Love God supremely and to love your neighbor as yourself. But when we do that, I have occurred to me, I asked, a very wise man asked a question one time that really made me stop and think about this. When you ask the question, how close can we get to the world and still be a Christian? He asked the question, if people were being arrested, persecuted, and even killed for being a Christian today, how much evidence is there in your life to convict you? And, that made a lot of sense to me, because if we're honest with ourselves and we see that, everybody else can too.
And that's right. And I think sometimes that's that point of stepping back and actually looking at ourselves. And sometimes I think we need to look at the day we just lived. What did I do this past day to live for God? Did I get caught up in other things? Because if we don't stop back and look at it, we never recognize how far away we get. Because haven't you, like me, found yourself away from God unintentionally many times? Why? Because we're not looking back at our day sometimes saying, what did I do today for God? Did I encourage anybody? Did I talk to anybody? Did I share my faith with anybody? Did I invite somebody to come to church? Did I do anything to live this life on purpose for God? Was I compassionate to other people? Did I check on them? What did I do for God? And if we look back through a day and say, you know what, I did nothing. Boy, that's a wasted day, isn't it? That's a wasted day considering why we're on this earth. It's great points. We need to make sure there's enough evidence to convict us as a Christian if it ever comes down to it, where there's no doubt. Any other questions or comments? And I want you to know, we still got more of the list to go, but I'm not saying this to beat you up. I've got plenty of flaws in every one of these things, struggles that I've had from time to time. The whole point of this, to go through it, is for us to figure out, do I have a problem? And if I do, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do to turn to God to get better at it? That's the point of this list. That's the point of our discussion this morning as we strive to live more faithfully for God. Yes?
I just want to say one more thing on the parents thing. Parents tend to think, well, if you love your kid, you'll protect them and do all this stuff for them. And I think we've just lost the meaning of love and a true love raising kids. Not that it's easy, trust me. But we've got to love them enough to see them maybe hurt and challenged sometimes, difficult, because our job is to prepare them for life, for later on, for the difficult things, like you said. But we use that word love. We misuse that word love a lot of times when it comes to our kids, because we love them so much. We're so obsessed with them. We don't want them to have any difficulty. That's a natural feeling, but that's not the God way.
That's right. If we love them, our objective is to help them through this life, but ultimately to get them to heaven. And we have to let them go through that process. And so much of parenting, we want parenting to be quick, instead of realizing how much time it takes to truly raise a child, to lead them through tough times of life without swooping in and taking it away. And sometimes it's looking and saying, listen, that's part of the consequences. Now, I'm here for you through this consequence, but you still have to face that consequence. And I think sometimes it's great to talk to them about it. How did that make you feel? Do you ever want to feel that way again? Well, you know what? You probably don't need to do that, do you? They never need to doubt that we love them. But the thing is, we also can't take it all away. We're not going to have godly kids prepared for this world and the world to come if we don't take time to parent our kids.
But back to what Doug said earlier about, they get a car, get all this stuff, and don't have to work for it, and all that. I mean, he's spot on. I mean, I realize kids today don't have to work like me and Barry did when we were growing up. I mean, it's just not the way society is now. I mean, they're just not, people are not raising their families that way. There's not just people living on farms, or there's always a lot of work to do. But this is why I'm a sports guy. This is where I think our sports teams comes really into play. If we use it the right way, we've got to allow them to fail. I mean, believe me, Daddy let us fail plenty of times. I mean, when we're out there working together, it's the only way you learn. Mm-hmm. Now, what opportunity does a young person have to fail and learn from today? Because most people, both mom and daddy work, kid goes to school, he comes home, what's he involved in, or she? What opportunity is there to fail?
Yeah.
But if we get them involved in some activity, and I like to say sports, because I love sports, but in fact, just like Cooper. Yesterday, Cooper had a really tough day. I mean, it was bad, but, Jeremy's not sitting there making excuses for him. He's trying to, and he's going to have to learn from it. But how many times do we do that?
Yeah.
Kevin Foster gave the best talk when he spoke to the graduating seniors over here. When it's been several years ago now, and this the gist of what he said was, "My wish for you is that you fail. You learn how to fail."
Yeah. But that's right. We don't. And I'm glad, I understand, and if you, grandparent, parent, I hope you're listening to some of this, of the advice that people are giving, because honestly, it's spot on. People are telling you because they've learned through their mistakes, things that they haven't done well, or things that they realized along the way. Learn from this. This is something that we need to be better at with our kids. We need to help them to grow to be these future men and women of God. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
I was always told tough love is love too.
Yeah, that's true. Tough love is love too. Yeah.
You gotta get that every once in a while.
You do. You do. But I'm going to tell you, I think sometimes tough love is the greatest of loves.
I think so.
Because you're really helping them to develop and become the person God wants them to be.
Tough love is good on both sides.
Well, but also you think about it. As parents, if we don't give our kids tough love, what's going to happen in the marriage when it's tough? If we can't deal with the tough love, the tough moments, what's going to happen? No, my parents always swept in and took care of things, and it was always better within just a couple of seconds. Why isn't it like that in marriage? Well, it's tough, but I still love you. It's those moments. Yes?
Like Brian's saying, whether it's sports, whether it's life in general, you got to learn to lose before you know how to win.
100%. And I agree with that. And I do think that's a great quality with sports. That could be in music, anything. But I see people, I see great coaches be mad, upset when they lose. And I'm sitting there thinking, thank you. Not that I want you to have a temper tantrum. That's not the point. The point is the great coaches take those situations to push their team to be better. Others are like, great, we lost. Why are we even trying anymore? And you see it almost lighten up, and it's like, whoa. That's your moment to push. If everything's going well, kids feel like they've got it easy. When it's hard, if you push them through it, help them to get better, it is. It's important that they go through those moments so they can see those are the moments that define me of who I am. Because in the struggles, if I lay down, that defines me. If I get up and dust myself off and I push even harder, that defines me. And so which kid are we raising? And so those are the things we need to make sure we're constantly doing. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Okay, well, this probably open a can of worms, but I think...
Yeah, with 1 minute left. I see how it is.
Well, I think a lot of times the father in the situation, God puts things on the father, and the mother is usually the loving, and a lot of times fathers don't want to stand up and be the bad guy. And sometimes we just have to be, and I understand that the mother's job is very difficult and different, but I think a lot of men, a lot of fathers, don't have the courage to stand up and discipline the children. And it's left to the mother, which is really it's probably not God's way that have that on her. And so that's where a lot of families fail and the kids fail because the dad doesn't step up.
Yeah.
And I can be that guy too sometimes.
I heard one time that the father's the head of the house, the mother's the heart of the house.
Yeah, I think that's a good. The man's the head of the house, the wife's the heart of the house, and I like that. I like that. Yes, sir.
Cain, when Cain's offering wasn't accepted, God didn't say, "Well, he tried. I'll just go ahead and accept it."
Yeah.
He didn't accept it, and then he got wrought, angry about it, and his countenance fell. It says, and then God says, "Basically, it's up to you.
Yeah.
If you do well, then you'll be accepted. If you don't, well, sin's right there, ready for you.
Yeah.
You don't turn and do right."
That's right. So last thought, because Mark, that way I don't leave this as a can of worms open. I think it's vital for us to understand it takes two parents to raise kids. And that's the importance of marriage, that's the importance of parenting, and I know some of y'all didn't have that, and I know there's struggles with that. That's not the point. I'm just telling you God's way. God wanted there to be a man and a woman raising those kids because those two perspectives help to raise a whole child. And it takes both of you being on the same page, even though different styles, still being on the same page to raise your child to get them to heaven. So thank you.